I'm Beasley, and I am the artist of the night.
It's a way to escape from our own realities, a way to heal, a way to bring closure to yourself and with others and find connections with other people that you didn't think you would even be connected to, and to really enjoy finding out more of who you are and who you can be.
Welcome to another episode of Artist of the Night. Today I have the great fortune of speaking with Mr. Chris Beasley, a local poet. He is co-lead of Poetry 719 and is a prolific poet. Hello, Chris. How are you today?
I am fantastic. About yourself?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. So yeah, let's go ahead and get this kicked off here. Kind of the first question I have for you is, so poetry is your chosen medium. How did you get involved with poetry?
I've always kind of wrote since I was a kid, like on and off. But once I turned, I think it was 26, I think that's when I actually started taking it a little more seriously, and then realizing hey, this is something I really wanted to do. And then also not knowing that I had family members that were poets and everything. So I think it just kind of runs in the family. And I went to Chicago one year, and my cousin took me to an open mic, and I was like, yo, this is amazing. And I just really love it. And it took me a few more years to really gravitate back to that. But once I did and started finding other community people that were actually just starting out too, it really just made me be like, hey, this is what I really enjoy, and found my voice at the time for it.
This poem is called Juice Box. We sit out of square juice box cartons, full of fructose corn syrup, sticky fingers, sticky mouths, sticky laughs. Some rays make our melanin glow. Our sweat drips as we crisp from the heat of the sun. Pass the sunscreen queen. Can I rub SPF on your back? Can you get my shoulders? We have to protect our skin too. But these juice boxes aren't sugar-free. Our glucose levels are rising higher than the temperatures between us and the weather. It's hot. We'll do better for our insides next time. We take the last sip and crush the box. How sweet it is. How sweet we are.
Excellent. And so, so you came into it, I guess, a little later. And so, were you kind of more of a casual poet, or was it just something that you kind of did, or were you not involved with it at all?
I kind of just journaled for a little while, and was oh, I like writing, but never really took it as a medium for myself. When I used to you would dabble in different arts until you kind of figure out what you like. I, painted for a little bit, was never really good, but enjoyed it. Tried to learn how to play instruments. And even though I have family that are really great musicians, that just wasn't, that wasn't for me. And eventually poetry, I think came back, was hey, this is what you should be doing and have been doing on and off. So how about doing it a little more therapeutic and more seriously?
So one thing I've noticed with poetry is that there kind of appears to be on the surface, maybe kind of two kind of distinct forms that poetry takes. And that's one, a written and published thing that someone would take and digest. And then there's also the performance aspect, where you can go to a performance of poetry and you're going to get a very different experience in that. Can you maybe speak to those, and do you have a preference with one of those?
I love performance poetry. I have a slam background and have competed nationally several times. I like I'm weird when it comes to slam because I really like the strategy and like the game of slam, but like not the politics of slam and like all the things that come with it. But I really do and want to be more written poet and like really hone that skill of written poetry because that's a totally different concept and idea and just like visually and a skill to like write a poem and make it look visually pleasing and flow on page as opposed to like you have a little more freedom performing it and then being able to translate that poem differently on page I think is just a mastery like skill to have and I really like admire people that are really great at paper poetry just as much as people that are performative as well.
Money hero. You can't be Batman unless you are super rich, like Warren Buffett.
Can you maybe talk about slam a little bit? Potentially there are people who might be watching this who have not been exposed to slam poetry.
Yeah, so slam poetry is competitive poetry. It involves judges and getting your poem that you poured your whole heart into to be judged by 5 other random people, and they take the high score and the low score off. It's a scale from like 1 to 10, 1 decimal point. And you know, you go on stage, you got 3 minutes to perform your poem with no props, literally just you and the stage and a microphone. And then after that, they give you a score. And it's really fun. I also understand why like a lot of people have gravitated away from slam in the sense of just like the stress and the pressure of slam. But I really do love just like listening to like poems that are very aggressive, like I won't say aggressive, but like just very like authentic and very like driven to a point to get their point across and everything. Yeah.
Would you say that's a fairly common characteristic of slam poetry?
No, I think there's a misconception of slam in the sense of like it has to like be a lot of yelling and screaming and like, you know, a lot of trauma forced poems. And I don't think that always has to be that. I feel like, you know, you can make a poem about, I've heard people do poems about butterflies and it's like really dope, or like, you know, a conversation they had with their grandma that, you know, it's just a memory that they've had in themselves and they wanted to share that story. And it doesn't always have to be a sad story, or I think those other stories are very important to talk about, you know, your experiences too. But I think there's the stigma that slam is only one way and can only be seen one way. When I think that like, because it's competitive, you know, you're like, hey, sometimes people are like, I am trying to get a high score or I'm trying to win. And so oftentimes we share some really heavy things for the sake of slam and for the sake of a score. And you can hold space for both those things. I believe that you can have those poems. You can also have those really funny, lighthearted poems as well. And poetry doesn't always have to be dark and gloomy. And like, you know, we're not always these people just in all black in coffee shops crying about like the man and like the patriarchy and hierarchy and money and all that, you know, even though that does play a part of it too.
Mm-hmm. So it allows for the entire breadth and depth of the human experience in that sense.
I think so, yeah. I think it's a great platform to really share that human experience, because a lot of us don't get to actually talk about, you know, our experience. And I think the slam stage is a really good stage to have that opportunity and to really get a lot of feelings out and say the things that you probably may not normally be able to say in certain settings.
We are a collective of Colorado artists, writers, activists, dreamers, and soil worshipers. Our air smells like fresh cut bud, orange sunset skies, snow-capped peaks, and vibrant blooming flowers that'll make you stop and embrace the moment. We care for our own. Treat newcomers like family. Laugh like kindred spirits. Break bread, because that's love. Hugs become home, because that's love. Acceptance of you, because that's love. As we journey through each mile, we find ourselves and each other.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because you have kind of also stepped into a role sort of as a facilitator and a community leader in that sense, as far as your involvement with Poetry 719. And can you talk a little bit about Poetry 719, maybe how that came about and kind of where it is right now?
Yeah, so I originally started with Here. And like, it started from Word Wednesday, and then Word Wednesday, we were like, hey, like we want a spot for poets. And so, because oftentimes it gets kind of hard to like read a poem in a bar, you know, when it's really loud and everything. And so we were like, hey, let's start this other thing over here. And it originally started at actually one of Josh Kennard's, another one of Josh Kennard's like coffee shops. And we started in a very small space and like, you know, had like 60, 70 people just like crammed in a very small space that was probably for maybe 20 people, you know. And I definitely realized like, hey, there's something here, and there's a voice that needs to be heard here. And, you know, Philip Curtis, you know, I definitely call him like the godfather of poetry, and did a lot of mentoring and like was doing poetry in like Sierra and other schools, and then when him and I like connected, like it was like an instant, like took me under his wing and really was like, hey, like let's really show people what poetry can be in the Springs area. And I really appreciate him for really just like allowing me to be like, hey, be you, and like don't be afraid to like just really dig into this art form. And so like it was great to have like somebody that's a mentor, and someone that I would definitely call a friend and all that, to guide me and show me, like help me get out of my shell and like, you know, enjoy being me within this art form.
And I think you're passing that forward too to people by creating opportunities for people to express themselves through poetry.
I hope so. I really hope so. That's really my goal, is for people to be like, oh, I see that person doing something that I really enjoy, and I too want to do that, or continue to do that. But yeah, we started with Here. I think I was with Here. I want to say like 8 years or something, from baby stages to going into like slam teams and going to nationals, going into a nonprofit status and being on the board for that, and working with youth so they can go to youth nationals, and, you know, worked with like UCCS to like send their team to nationals, and meeting a lot of great poets along the way. And then from there, I noticed another hole within the scene of like, you know, there's a lot of poets, but there's not a lot of people of color poets, Black poets. And seeing within the scene that like, you know, a lot of poets that don't look like me sharing our story, not feeling like there was a space for people that look like me to share that story. And so that's when I started Black Voices Matter. I was like, hey, I think, you know, if we get like 5 people to sit around and read some poems, cool, like it's gonna be great. And that turned into like the first show of 60 plus people. And then like it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and people being like, hey, I didn't know Black people were in Colorado. How are all these Black people here? And like just people feeling love and being like, hearing a poem, being like, yeah, I feel that way too. Yeah, I experienced that too. Yeah, thank you for writing that, because I didn't have the words to get that experience out. And I'm glad that you did, because it spoke to me.
The process for me a lot of times is like, what do I want to talk about? What makes me feel good? And what do I want to share? I think it's important that, you know, when we have an idea, to also understand what we want to say and what we're trying to give the audience or to give to ourselves. So sometimes, you know, that poem may take 7, 8 different drafts. Sometimes it takes less. I think writing for yourself is the most important thing to do.
To the dark-skinned black boys, your hands are expected to be hard, like rock, like concrete and granite. Speak with fists, always ready to fight. Your heart is expected to be tough, like iron, tungsten, carbon, steel. Hard to break, unwilling to communicate. Your actions are expected to be monster, like Incredible Hulk, like Beast, like Venom. Emotions full of rage, anger, and destruction. Your dark skin is viewed as weapon, like everybody can get these hands. What's another fist through drywall? You better be scared of this dark skin that is seen as aggressive, violent, intimidating. To the dark-skinned black boys, it is okay to have gentle hands, like flowers, like cashmere, like sunsets. Soft-spoken, like a summer rain is gifted in your throat, and the quiet storm in your chest feels like peace, like joy and happiness. To the dark-skinned black boys, you are loved, deserving of love, worth loving.
Yeah. I really love that poem. It's like when you're like, you know, sometimes you like write something or do something and you don't really think much of it at the time. But then like the more I was reading it, one, I was like, yo, like, I feel like as a dark-skinned person, we don't always get that space to be vulnerable and to be sensitive. And like, if you are sensitive, it's like, you know, this, you're considered weak and like all these things. And like, no matter what is done, it's always, for people that are dark-skinned like myself, it's always, there seems like to be like this aggressive undertone that people think that is happening. And it's okay to know that you're not aggressive. It's, you know what I mean? To know that you deserve love and should be loved. And like telling myself that and telling me that, like, you know, I struggled with my skin complexion for so long and like really fought that like I was ugly because I was dark skinned and that like I don't deserve to be loved and that like I am just like this angry person all the time. And, you know, that's what we're fed. We're fed that like we're not beautiful. Colorism is a big thing, and like not finding beauty and happiness within ourselves because of our skin tone is really hard to like navigate through. I just want other people that, you know, are dark skinned to really be like, yo, yeah, my skin is beautiful. My tone is beautiful and I deserve to be loved. And like, I don't deserve to be mistreated or called these names, you know, by people. I grew up with that a lot of like, you know, there was a lot of different treatments, you know, growing up because, you know, being darker skinned, and even now, like, it happens as well. So it's just like me sharing like, hey, you just know that I care about you and love you. And like, you know, I really love my skin tone. You know, so there's some days I'm like, ooh, look at that. That's you. That's all you.
Mile High Understanding. Colorado Springs. Weed, hail, potholes, and mountains. Come visit, don't stay.
So, Chris, do you are there poets out there maybe that are national or famous, or I guess do you have inspiration?
Outside of Ashley Cornelius being one of my favorite poets of all time, I'm not being biased at all,
Hey,
right?
she's one of my favorites too.
Yeah. Joshua Bennett is one of my favorite poets. Vogue Robinson from Las Vegas is one of my favorite poets for sure. Mercedes Holtree from Albuquerque. There's quite a few. A lot of poets that I've like met from competing and just being at nationals, like, you know, Utah and Albuquerque, we're all fairly close when it comes to like doing competitions and stuff. Because we're so, you know, we're basically right next to each other. Just being able to get that camaraderie with other communities outside of, you know, Colorado. And like also, yeah, Denver, like we really have been like, they've been super supportive of us building our community and trying to really give people more access to poetry. And like, there was so much love from Denver that really helped us build what we have now.
This poem is called News. Have you heard the news today? A black kid was gunned down in the streets by a police officer. Witnesses say he was unarmed, hands in the air, clearly surrendering and cooperating. Police officer still shoots. Did that officer fear that young black man's gunpowder skin spits bullets from within, or did he just need to empty out some frustration? Say, I'll write a report. Say he ran or resisted. He fits the description of someone we've been looking for. All these thugs look the same. I mean, I thought I used my taser, not my gun. Besides, who would the people believe? These hoodlums or me? I could use a paid vacation if all else sells. This badge will give me a mental illness claim. Bang. Another bullet Ziploc body bag getting carried away. Have you heard the news today? In the land of the so-called free, we have the right to assemble, to peacefully protest, to speak out against this corrupted justice system, marching in the streets wanting answers, but we miss the fine print that reads, there'll be consequences. Police and military riot gear, K9s, fire hoses. I can feel the tear gas, it's burning my face. I can feel my bones break. Have you heard the news today? Police are sworn under oath to serve and protect our community, but we all know that bullets have no names. But apparently, officers' trigger fingers have an appetite for minorities and majorities. We get no justice when crooked cops use their peace, Mr. Officer. Can I see your ID? Can I view you as a criminal just as much as you do me? Is anyone in this precinct held accountable? Why are indictments so swift when police blood is spilt? Have you heard the news today? A mother's womb was never branded with death sentence articles. Fathers don't wrap their pride and joy in Target practice sheets. Babies don't cry chalk outlines. Most parents believe their child will grow up to do great things, not be another homicide with more questions than answers. We are dying, we are crying. We has never been more important than my lifetime to now. We can't forget Michael Brown, unarmed, just hands. Jamal Crawford, pellet gun in Walmart. 13-year-old Andy Lopez, 7 bullets to the chest, toy, wooden gun. These names were never meant to be metaphors or examples in our poems. Their parents, family, and friends will hold on to their deaths, reliving it over and over again. And we sadly will move on, but we won't forget. With so much death, so much blood, and so much anger, we are still standing. We are still fighting for justice. And we are still united. And that is the best news I've heard today.
So aspiring poets that are out there that may be watching this, and these could be aspiring poets who are perhaps students or younger people, or they could be people who wrote when they were younger and maybe their career has, or their life has taken them in a different direction and now they're at a point where they want to start doing something creative again, or even people that have never attempted to write a poem but love it and want to get involved with it. Do you have any words that you might want to share for these people?
Yeah. Get a notebook and a pen. Get your computer, get your phone. I love that poetry is so easily accessible because you don't really have to whereas you're like, oh, I want to learn the guitar. You got to spend all this money to get a guitar. But poetry is just you can just write. And the fact that you don't even know how to speak, with language, especially with the English language, we get so caught up in needing to spell properly and needing to rhyme and needing to do all these things. And it's you don't need to, I say this a lot. I feel like you don't need to rhyme in poetry. We get so caught up in well, what does this word rhyme with? This, and it's you trying to figure out if this rhymes or not, takes away from you just writing, I feel like sometimes. And I'm just just write. There's so much poetry out there that that you can just study, and it's so easily obtainable to do. I am very bad at reading music notes. I can't, that's just not me. I got family members that can do a song on their saxophone or drums off the first time of just hearing it, or can read sheet music, and I'm I can't read any of that, but I can listen to a poem and be I like that. I can write something,
1,000 days of sunshine. You capture rain rays. The light of my life shines bright whenever you smile. Yeah.
That about wraps it up for our Artist of the Night episode here with Mr. Chris Beasley. I thank you, everybody out there that has watched this. With that, I would like to say goodbye. And again, Chris, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And,
this is great.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. And all right, hands flip out here. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
At a coffee shop with Pops, he asked me, where did we go wrong? See, we were taught to be men but act like children, and women are still standing strong. Somewhere, the bond was broken. The backbone of family turned to scoliosis and curved in other directions. Our response was to throw out ability. We lost unity in the community, complain about poverty, and where does it end? With more complaining. Does it take a real man to be a father, or is it a dad, or are they one and the same? Whispers of sweet nothings to me that mean the world to you, popping blue diamonds instead of giving our women blue diamonds. And speaking of marriage, what happened to them lasting past the I do's? The ones, the twos, the wrinkles, the pounds, and getting to the point of I bury you. Isn't that the meaning of death do us? We both took a sip out of our mugs. I glanced at him. He wasn't really my father, but he schooled me like he was. As I looked into his eyes, I saw a father's past, as he passed me pictures of children he hadn't seen in years. And I asked him the same question. Where did we go wrong?
That's good. All's good. Okay.
I make up poems because I don't know how to poet.